Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the film Send Help. So, I'm a big fan of director Sam Raimi. He's honestly one of the most recognizable filmmakers working today, and I think anyone who knows his work can identify a movie of his just by looking at it. He's especially big in horror, between stuff like the Evil Dead trilogy, Drag Me to Hell, and then some big comic book movies too, like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and the Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire, commonly even referred to as the Raimi trilogy. I think all of his movies have mostly been good. He's had some disappointments. I think Doctor Strange, wasn't really his fault. I think that was a largely just kind of in this phase of Marvel fatigue and just sort of, underwhelming projects they've made, and then I think some script issues that movie had. I don't think that was really his fault. He did the best he could, though, with it. And Drag Me to Hell, a lot of people do like it. I didn't really care for it much, but that was also more of a script problem than, a problem with his direction. I think he's just a great filmmaker, and he really has a lot of talent. He's had a few interesting other projects in his filmography as well, but Send Help is Raimi's first R-rated movie in many, many years, and it's also a return to his horror roots, which is very exciting. And I think it's safe to say that just about every Raimi movie, even Oz the Great and Powerful, has some kind of horror element within them. And as I said, even that film, Oz the Great and Powerful, which is more of a family movie, it's PG, it has these scenes that do feel kind of like a horror movie where it's like someone's like kind of, losing themselves and just kind of becomes more of a monster. It's really, he loves his horror. I don't know why, he just, every movie, no matter what it is, has some horror. Even Doctor Strange felt like, probably the most horror Marvel has had. And, even the Spider-Man movies have some kind of horror in them too. He just really loves his horror filmmaking, and I respect it heavily because I think horror is a great genre. And Drag Me to Hell, that movie is PG-13, but he really cranked that movie up. Like, I've seen R-rated movies that are more tame than Drag Me to Hell. That movie is just so gross and so out there. But really, it's awesome, though, to see Raimi back at his full power again, making something insanely bloody and gory, but also a whole lot of fun. Send Help is an awesome movie. I really do mean that. It's really great. It has so much passion and creativity behind it. Writers Damian Shannon and Mark Swift have a script that's very clever, exciting, and unpredictable. Raimi then adds his visual flair on top of that, and then you have Dylan O'Brien and Rachel McAdams here too as the leads, and just all in all, you have a really solid film. While I'm on the subject, though, O'Brien and McAdams are both terrific here. I've definitely been a huge fan of McAdams for many years now. I think, one of my favorite roles she's done is in Game Night. She's so funny there. She's super charming. She's really just great in everything I've seen her in, and I'm fully convinced she's just one of the most instantly likable people on Earth. Like, everything I see her in, I'm like, she's just so likable. She's so endearing to watch. She's funny. She's charming. But also, she has some really serious acting chops, too. And I think she just really kills it in this movie. But O'Brien, on the other hand, is someone I knew of and liked in the Maze Runner films. Haven't really seen him in much other stuff. I know he's big in Teen Wolf. Haven't watched that. But O'Brien really wasn't fully on my radar until recently, when I was frankly blown away by his performance, or performances rather, in Twinless. He was excellent in that movie. I kid you not, I think he should have been nominated for Best Actor for that film. I understand it's a very stacked year, and probably he didn't have a chance, but I'm just saying, if I was doing an award show, I'm pretty sure he would be nominated. But I think in this movie, in particular, both of these actors work super well together, ironically since their characters start off despising each other at work, but their chemistry is great. I love their banter here. McAdams is once again super likable, but also finds this great balance of being very awkward and uncomfortable, and her character is very complex in that way, but I think she nails it. And I would even go as far as to say this may be McAdams' best performance ever that I've seen. At least definitely very high up there, if not the best. But she's really great. And then O'Brien plays this awful person who is such a jerk, but also has this very thin line where you can't tell when he's being sincere, when he's being nice, and when he's putting on an act just for his own gain. And that's just one thing I have to give this movie a lot of credit for. Even though we've seen movies like this in the past, and it sometimes even leans into the tropes a bit, it never feels outright predictable. Watching it, I never felt like I knew exactly where it was going because the movie shifted things around fairly often. It doesn't make it, very easy for you to say, like, okay, this is where it's going here. Like, even if it gets to the destination you expected, the way it gets there is kind of surprising and definitely throws you for some loops. And I do have to say, this movie gets pretty gnarly to watch. Like, if you're sensitive to blood and gore, maybe sit this one out. There's not a ton of it throughout. Like, I kind of went in expecting a lot of blood throughout the entire movie just because of, Raimi and Evil Dead and stuff like that. There's not a ton of it throughout, but when it's there, it's very gross and brutal, probably more so than most movies out there. Just warning you, I'm not even someone who winces at a lot of that stuff in movies, but this movie made me wince on multiple occasions. There were a few times I was like literally like biting my teeth, like, oh, like that's just so gross. But it's very well done, very, just classic Raimi. And I love how you can still feel Raimi's style throughout the entire film. It's a bit toned down compared to his earlier works, and maybe even Doctor Strange, which is his most recent work before this, but it felt purposeful. I guess if I'm trying to explain it, to me it felt like Raimi was trying to spare his big stylish choices for key moments in the movie, instead of using it constantly, which I was totally fine with, because they really stand out when they're used. Like, a few close-up shots early on in the film, especially, were great and conveyed the intended feeling perfectly. And really throughout the film in general, you'll get some Raimi stylish shots that, just feel very much like something he would do, but he doesn't overdo it. Like, Doctor Strange, I think you could argue, was a much more heavily stylish film. Like, he does a lot of those crazy, like, zoom into the eyes and stuff like that. In this movie, he's very, it's a bit more held back, but I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't think he's held back because of studio interference or anything like that. I think, to me, it's just like Raimi kind of taking a step back, because I think that's something I've kind of made a point about in the past, but something I really have to say is, like, I respect when directors don't go over the top with their style because they're trying to just serve the story. Like, a movie, it doesn't matter how stylish you are as a filmmaker. I think if you're putting yourself so much into the movie that we can't focus on the story because it's so in your face, then that's a problem. And I think what Raimi does here is he puts story first, and then he uses style as a kind of like, to kind of inject some of his own personal being into the film. And I think it works very well. Like, you'll know what I mean when you see it. I'm just saying, if you're expecting like total like 10 out of 10 Sam Raimi experience, you're not going to quite get that, but it's like, it's still very much a Sam Raimi movie in the best way possible. But a lot of the things you would expect to be great here totally are, like the cinematography, production design, the scares. This movie is pretty scary a few times. Like, there's some good jump scares here. And then Danny Elfman's score, which I would say is one of Elfman's best in quite a few years, actually. It's really good. I've been listening to the music a bit over the last week or so, and it's really nice. And there's a lot of stuff I liked here in this film, but I do think the movie has one issue that holds it back for me from being, like, a step above, and it's largely related to the pacing. The movie starts off super strong, and it ends very strong, too, but there's this section in the second act where I would say it gets a bit repetitive. I didn't mind anything that was happening, but there's a decent stretch where I was wondering, like, how long it would be until something else happened that would kickstart the story again. And eventually that thing did happen, but I think if the movie just removed, like, 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes max, it would have flowed a bit better. And I'm trying to think of, like, the best way to kind of, get my point across, but it's like if you ever watched a movie and it just feels like it's not, like, slogging, like, it's not boring you, but it's just kind of at that point where you're like, I know something has to happen to kind of, get the story back on track, because right now we're just kind of in a lull. Like, that's what it felt like. It was like, the movie does something. I was like, okay, we're actually spending like quite a bit of time doing this. And I was like, I think we need to kind of move along now. The movie could have cut a few minutes, just shaved a few minutes off that little bit, and I think it just would have been a better paced film. There's also this one dream sequence that probably should have been cut. I think just looking back at the movie, it was probably one of the more Sam Raimi parts of the film, but I don't know, it didn't feel necessary. It really felt like he only kept it because he liked the scene, not because it was really serving the story any purpose. And this one moment on a cliff in the movie that kind of faded to black afterward, I think the movie should have just kept the scene going and, just let the audience see it instead of kind of, cutting away, getting back to it later. You'll know what scene I'm talking about when you watch the movie. I just didn't think that worked. It took me out of it. But other than those things, I really had such a blast with this movie. And I'm not totally sure how rewatchable the film will be. I am excited to rewatch it though. Like, I do want to see it again. And hopefully I'll like it even more the second time. But I can definitely say that at least on a first viewing, it was very exciting to watch. And I've been thinking about it for several days. Like, this movie has stayed on my mind, and I do want to see it again very soon. But I'll say this. If you like Sam Raimi, see it. If you like survival movies, see it. If you like Dylan O'Brien and Rachel McAdams, see it. And if you like watching original movies, definitely go out and see it in theaters while you can. I promise you won't regret it. I'm going to rate Send Help a B+. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.